Hi, this is Skip Stewart, Chief Improvement Officer with Baptist Memorial Healthcare. Today I'm with Brandon Brown from Continuous Coaching Commitment, a Master Kata coach. Brandon, as you know, we're having a coaching skill camp today, and we've had some practitioners come in and from different facilities. They're going to kind of go through the board with different roles. So what exactly are we about to see here?
So you're about to see three Baptist Memorial team members in the role of learner, first coach, and second coach. You'll first see a first coach and learner coaching kata, and that will be followed with a second coach to first coach second session. You'll see the first coach coaching the learner on some very basic things like the end date for the target condition, particularly the way the obstacles are written, which we have found is the heart of really producing good PDSAs. And then you'll see also the second coach offering with open-ended questions some guidance and coaching on how to move from go and sees and non-actionable type of more go-do experiments into more of an exploratory or hypothesis type experiments. And you'll also see the second coach bring attention to the data for the metrics not being run charted and not being trended.
Fantastic. Let's go learn together.
All right, Nicole, what is our challenge?
By December 31st, 2017, we want to decrease patient access denials to 71 a month.
Okay, and what is your focus process currently?
Right now we're working to reduce mammo and bone density denials.
Okay, what is your target condition?
Right now the physician is going to order our test. The scheduling screening test will be using appropriate guidelines. The insurance verifier will check the eval and treat, PCP, PA, and diagnosis and time frames. Donna's then going to check all bone densities. The ABNs are going to fire correctly. Staff will know that if the ABN fires, it needs to be signed, and then we have a happy patient. So our process characteristics are that we have developed standard guidelines to utilize. We create a process to check mammo, diagnosis, and time frames, and that we reduce diagnosis errors for mammos and for our bone densities. So the way that we're measuring that is we'll have a number of people who are trained on standard guidelines, so our goal is 15. A percent of mammos reviewed prior to date of service, our percent there, our goal is 4. We only want 9 of our denials to be mammos and 8 bone density denials. And hopefully we will only have 75 denials in the month for our target condition.
Okay, well, in your target condition, what are the dates, or what's the date that your target condition ends?
Oh, okay. This is, we want to achieve this by next Friday, which is October the 27th.
Okay.
So I'll put that up here.
Okay, so in your current condition, what is your actual condition now?
Right now our physician is putting in the test, scheduling, screens, diagnosis, and time frames and schedules. The insurance verifier checks for eval and treat, PCP, and PA. Donna checks diagnosis codes on bone densities. Then the patient arrives, and oftentimes the ABN fires. It's kind of sporadic. The staff decide to get the ABN signed or not, and most of our patients don't like signing that ABN. Right now, our physicians and scheduling, they don't know about insurance guidelines. No one currently checks diagnosis timeframes on our mammos. We don't always select a billable diagnosis on the mammos, and the same thing for the billable codes on bone densities. As far as our metrics, we don't have anybody trained on our guidelines yet. We don't have anybody reviewing the mammos prior to date of service. We've had 3 mammo denials as of today and 15 bone density denials as of today, for a total of 80 for the month.
Okay. What was your last step?
So my last step was to create a mammo guideline for staff to utilize when verifying coverage.
Okay, what did you expect?
I expected that this guideline will assist staff in ensuring we have the correct diagnosis codes with the correct time frames.
Okay, and what actually happened?
Well, I started collecting and recording data to verify the things that were used for our memo guidelines. I went to visit with Beverly to verify that data, but she was out of her office. I had the correct diagnosis for the 2D and the 3D screening memos along with the follow-up diagnostic memos.
Okay, and what did you learn?
So I learned that these CPT codes are the ones that we use for memo screenings. So we have for 3D and 2D, we have the diagnostic codes for our memos, and then we need to be using R92.8 for the abnormal finds on our tests.
Okay. What obstacles do you think are preventing you from reaching the target condition?
Right now, we obtain denials because staff don't understand the ABN codes. We have wrong second diagnosis codes. Clinics are scheduling testing outside of the billing time. Payers have different guidelines for acceptable diagnosis. And all Medicaid claims are automatically being written off, and some Blue Cross Blue Shield claims are automatically being written off.
Okay, which one obstacle are you going to address now?
Right now I'm working on payers have a different guideline for acceptable diagnosis.
Okay, in your obstacle, thinking about facts and data, the payers have different guidelines for acceptable diagnosis. What kind of outcomes do you have, or what's the impact of that obstacle?
Well, because we don't know which ones are accepted, which diagnosis code to use for each different payer, we have so many payers that if we put in the wrong diagnosis code, that automatically creates a denial.
So would you want to add to your diagnosis based on the outcomes?
Yeah, I guess I could be more specific here.
Okay, thank you. And what is your next step?
For my next step, I want to run a report on Tuesday to see if the CPT codes are being used correctly.
Okay, what do you expect?
I expect that there are going to be additional diagnosis codes that I'm going to need for my diagnostic memos.
Okay, and when can we go and see what you've learned from taking your next step?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Sounds great. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, Bobby, so tell me, how do you think the coaching cycle went?
I think it went okay. I think there are opportunities where we could improve.
Okay. How do you think it went well? And tell me a little bit about where you think you could improve.
So, I mean, she has really good process characteristics in both her target and current condition. I was able to help her understand that we need a date on her current target so we can know when we're supposed to be meeting that condition. Improvement, I think there could be some improvement based on her learning in her last step, and I could have coached her maybe to have a better step next time.
Okay. So as it pertains to the next PDSA cycle, do you think the learner is working at her threshold of knowledge?
Yes and no, based on the information she has. Yes. No, I think she could develop a better step around what she learned from her last step with her CPT codes that she has.
Okay, so yeah, when you look back at Nicole's previous PDSAs, I kind of noticed a little bit of a trend. Did you pick up on that?
I did. Now that you say that, there's a lot of go and do and some go and sees, and we really need to move towards some exploratory or hypothesis type experiments.
So tell me your idea on how we could possibly do that.
Well, I think based on what she learned and having the two CPT codes really related to her focus process, I'd like to see her pull those CPT codes into maybe a process change or do something in her next step where she can truly see the denials maybe on those two only.
Okay, yeah, so she has CPT codes. Maybe she could start formulating some guidelines and focus on trending down those denials. Do an experimental step there.
I think
Okay.
so, yes.
So, what did you want to pay attention to going into this coaching cycle?
So going into this coaching cycle, I really wanted to make sure that her obstacles were truly reflective of her target condition and that her step really focused in on that obstacle to try to eliminate that.
Okay. What I observed is that you did an excellent job picking up the fact that she did not have a date for her target condition. and also coaching her to make sure she's including facts, data, and the negative impact of the obstacles. I will continue to coach her on all of the obstacles and making sure that that's included, and then maybe pay particular attention to these last two obstacles. They seem pretty vague. Are those relevant? Can we make a PDSA around those? Do we even include those? Something maybe to look at for future coaching cycles. So what do you want to pay particular attention to in the next coaching cycle?
So particularly in the next coaching cycle, I think something we should look at is on her process metrics. She's looking at daily metrics, she's looking at the day before, but she really has no way to trend the data that she's getting. So she really doesn't know if her denials are truly going up or down in a day-to-day trend. So I'd like to pay attention and coach her to maybe put some run charts up so that we get a picture of what's going on truly in her target condition.
Yeah, and you kind of led to this, but so having those run charts and trending that out, how do you hope that will influence the learner?
I think she can see her day-to-day improvement or not improvement and focus her steps depending on where she goes on those run charts. Maybe take better steps next time, or that step did or didn't work. What do we do next?
Okay. All right, great job. Thank you.
So Nicole, we're back today, and I'm excited to see what you've learned from taking your last step. What is your current target condition?
By October 27th, physicians will put in the orders for our tests. Scheduling will screen the test using appropriate guidelines. The insurance verifier will check the eval and treat, the PCP, the PA, and the diagnosis and timeframes. Donna's going to check all our bone densities. Our ABNs will fire correctly. Staff will know that if the ABN fires, that it needs to be signed by the patient, and that will result in a happy patient. So our characteristics is we'll have a standard set of guidelines to utilize. We'll have a process to check memo diagnosis and timeframes. We have no diagnosis errors for memo and no errors for bone densities. So the way we measure that is we're going to measure the number that we have trained on the guidelines, which our goal is to have 15 staff members trained. To have 4% of our memos reviewed prior to date of service, and to only have 9 memo denials and only 8 bone density denials, and hopefully 75 denials for the month for our target condition.
Okay, and your current condition, what is your actual condition now?
So currently our physicians, they put in the orders, they scheduling screens the diagnosis and timeframes and schedules. The insurance verifier checks for eval and treat, PCP, and PA. Donna checks the diagnosis codes for bone density. Then the patient arrives, and sometimes our ABN fires, sometimes it doesn't. And then staff have to make a decision to get the ABN signed or not. And a lot of times our patients don't like signing those ABNs. So currently our physicians and scheduling, they're unaware of our insurance guidelines. We don't have anybody checking the diagnosis timeframes on memos. We don't always select the right diagnosis for memos and also the right billable code for bone densities. So right now we have none of our staff trained on our standard guidelines. None of our memos are being reviewed prior to date of service. We've had 3 memo denials today, and then 15 bone density denials. And then based on your feedback from our last cycle, I have created the running chart so I can see if I'm trending. So it looks like our memo code denials are actually increasing from 0, 1, 2, and then 3. And then the same thing for the bone density denials. They're also increasing as well over time. And then these are our pre-authorization denials, our total overall. And we're at 80 denials for the month currently.
Those look great. Thank you for that.
Yes.
What was your last step?
So my last step was to create a memo guideline for staff to utilize when verifying coverage.
Okay, what did you expect to happen?
I expected that the guideline will assist our staff in ensuring we have the correct diagnosis codes with the correct time frames.
And what actually happened?
Well, as I started collecting and recording data to verify what we used for our memo guidelines, I went to visit Beverly, but she was out of the office. But I did have the correct codes for the 2D and 3D screening mammograms along with the follow-up diagnostic memos.
And so what did you learn?
I learned that the following CPT codes are the ones that we use for mammo screenings. So here's for the 3D and the 2D, the diagnostic codes, and then for our memos. And then if we have the abnormals, we're supposed to use code R92.8.
Okay, great job. What obstacles do you think are now preventing you from reaching the target condition?
So based on your feedback, I've made them a little bit more specific, which really helped me guide me in my experiments. We obtain denials because staff do not know the ABN codes and they're not aware of when and when not to get the ABN signed. So this results in a potential denial. So we're going to start tracking the number of times that the ABNs are not correctly signed based on a predetermined list of ABN codes. Our next obstacle is wrong second diagnostic codes cause us to get denied because they don't meet medical necessity. So we're going to track the number of secondary diagnostic code errors. Clinics are scheduling follow-up testing outside billing timeframes because they are unaware of the process and the time frame for each provider necessary to meet the guidelines. Therefore, we get denials because we're out of the date time limits. So what we're going to do, we're going to start tracking the number of out-of-date follow-up testing denials from the clinics. Another obstacle we found is payers have different guidelines for acceptable diagnosis. This is preventing us from scheduling tests using the appropriate guidelines. So we're going to measure that by going to verify the top 6 paying insurance companies, their guidelines for mammo and bone densities to start criteria for our experiments.
Well, great job with your obstacles. I really appreciate of how you're going to measure those obstacles. Great job with that. I mean, I think you'll find, just like you said, the more details you get with your obstacle, the easier it is almost to make that second step or that next step.
Yes, absolutely. And so we, based on the feedback from last time, we did decide to cross these out just because it's so generic and we're not going to be able to get to that broad of an obstacle in our time frame before we reach our target.
Great job. Which one obstacle are we addressing now?
I'm still going to look at payers that have different guidelines for the different diagnoses.
Okay, and what is your next step?
My next step is to verify with Beverly that the codes that I've gathered are payable by each of the top 6 insurance companies by volume. Also, I want to verify which insurance companies cover the 3D memos and which ones do not, and hopefully get a list of acceptable CPT codes and a guideline that we can trial in the clinic tomorrow.
Okay, and what do you expect?
I expect that once I review the 3D memos ordered tomorrow, there will be no additional diagnostic codes that are needed for diagnostic memos. I also expect to have no 3D memos ordered, which result in denials with each of those 6 insurance companies that we create the list for. I'll learn if there are or are not additional CPT codes that are needed to guide the clinic staff.
Okay, and what type of step is this one?
This is a hypothesis.
So great job.
Yes.
Great job moving away from a go and see. When can we go see what you've learned?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.